May 23rd, 2026 marks the 50th anniversary of the Judgment of Paris, an event that changed the world of fine wine forever. Throughout the 20th century, and seemingly even before, wine had been centered in Europe, and not just Europe, but specifically France. Burgundy, Bordeaux, Côte d'Rhône, Chablis, Sancerre, Provence, Sauternes, these are the words, places, that to people all over the world meant and still mean that the wine in the bottle is some of the finest that they can find. It was on a level that almost no others could match. And behind this thinking was the all-important concept of old world superiority, which was and is rooted in the notion that fine wine requires centuries of heritage and terroir specific to the quote-unquote noble grapes of Europe. And those noble grapes were originally all French. Go figure. Wines of California and other wine-growing regions were often scoffed at and laughed away as primitive and not worth toying with. Not even if, maybe even especially if, they were growing and making wine with noble grapes meant for France's terroir. But by the 1970s, word of mouth was getting around that the wines coming out of California, specifically Napa Valley, were pretty GD good. British wine shop owner and educator Stephen Spurrier was a convert. He thought the world needed to understand how good wines from outside of France and, God forbid, all of Europe had become. So he convinced a panel of all French judges to undergo a quote-unquote blind tasting, though he did spring the blind part on them at the 11th hour, of French versus Californian wines. The best of both would be tasted side by side. Shockingly, two California wines won the top two spots. Chateau Montelena's Chardonnay and Stag Leap's Cabernet Sauvignon, beating out the Chard and Cab hailing from the finest wineries in Burgundy and Bordeaux, respectively. The French judges were so appalled, some tried to destroy their scorecards before the news could get out of what they had done, but the news did get out. And what followed was an awakening for California wine, the rise of Napa and Sonoma Valley, and the sudden obsession with all things Chardonnay and Cabernet. More than that, though, it also showed that other parts of the world could compete. France was no longer the unquestioned king of wine countries. With time, possibly any country, any terroir, could develop into a wine-producing territory of equal quality, with or without noble grapes, sometimes even with indigenous grapes that weren't even of the same species as the noble grapes. It opened up the world to the world. That all said, many, even in America, especially in America, in fact, have argued that we need to stop talking about the damn Judgment of Paris, that we can't keep clinging to this one story, this one event, to proclaim why people should be drinking Californian and American wines. I am not exactly one of those people. I do believe that it is true that we can't lean on it like a crutch, but it's also true that the lesson it gave to the world needs to be relearned over and over again. The chokehold of old world versus new world is still pretty pernicious. Even within the new or old world themselves, the lesson needs to be learned as we debate whether there are any good American wines outside of, say, California, Oregon, and Washington. And we had to debate Oregon and Washington not too long ago as well. In the old world, we're still rediscovering wines in nearly extinct indigenous grapes from Armenia, Greece, Slovenia, Slovakia, Portugal, and more. Ukrainian wine is now coming into its own. But it can't be that good, we would exclaim. The whole world would basically exclaim. I keep telling people about the Ukrainian wine, and they're like, well, it's bad, right? And I'm like, no, it's getting good. That's the point. And so the lesson needs to be relearned again and again. But the story is deeper than the Judgment of Paris itself. Believe it or not, this wasn't the first time. The Judgment of Paris was not the first time California wine beat French wine in an international competition. It was simply the latest. Now, the full story of American wine's history is way too lengthy to include here in full, but the broad strokes are: American wine in the 1800s won awards at multiple international competitions before finally clean sweeping the 1889 World Fair in Paris, taking home 34 of 36 possible awards. It was basically the Judgment of Paris before the Judgment of Paris. In this movie that we're going to talk about here today, Bottle Shock, Alan Rickman's Stephen Spurrier quips, I don't foresee the imminent cultivation of the Chicago vine in his inimitable Alan Rickman fashion. Yet it was wine from Chicago and Los Angeles, from Livermore Valley in California, even wine from Missouri that all took home awards throughout the 1800s. The French were so incensed then, after the 1889 World's Fair, that they changed the rules to invalidate all Californian wines in the preceding World Fair competitions after that year. And once we entered the early 1900s, Prohibition essentially wiped out the American wine industry, which did not fully recover until the 1960s to 1970s, when the Judgment of Paris took place. And thanks to Prohibition resetting American culture the way it did, we largely forgot our history of award-winning, internationally competitive wines that existed nearly 150 years ago. But for now, my friends, it's time to dig into this movie, Bottle Shock, from 2008, starring Alan Rickman, Bill Pullman, Chris Pine, Chris Pine's wig, Freddie Rodriguez, and Rachel Taylor, and pair some, perhaps, very Californian wines, or perhaps some very New World wines. This is a movie all about the new overtaking the old. Or maybe we're going to stick to the standard bearers from France or other parts of Europe. We shall see. But either way, happy 50th anniversary Judgment of Paris. As current Californians, we salute you.
Are you not entertained?
Yes, sir! We'll have a real good time!
He's Dave, and I'm Dallas, and this is Vintertainment. We have opinions on just about everything. Sometimes those opinions are spot on. Sometimes they go down easier with a glass of wine. This is Vintertainment, the wine and entertainment pairing podcast. Welcome to Vintertainment, people. We are the podcast where we pair wine with entertainment. It's as simple as that. The end, full stop. Don't question your elders. Now, a little additional information about the real people that our movie today is going to take some massive liberties with. In 1973, Stephen Spurrier partnered with the International Herald Tribune writer John Winroth and Patricia Gallagher to open a school in a former locksmith shop adjacent to his store. The school's mission was to teach wine appreciation to expatriate British and Americans living in France with English-speaking instruction. However, when interest grew among Parisians, French-speaking courses were also provided. The Académie du Vin had been receiving many visits from California winemakers and top U.S. wine writers, all bringing bottles for the team to try. The school's co-director, American-born Patricia Gallagher, suggested they hold a tasting to draw attention to the surprisingly high-quality wines coming out of the U.S., specifically California. This came after a Napa trip in 1975, where she returned to Paris, even more taken by the wines of California. The Academy held regular tastings of non-French wines, usually sourced through the embassies of nations represented. So this new idea of featuring American vintages was not a complete departure. But few wines outside of the established traditions ever really challenged the untested and unrivaled chokehold that French wines had on the world. But the question on almost no one's mind was, would that French supremacy and old world superiority remain intact after the upcoming tasting, which was to feature these newly appreciated American vintages?
And to be fair, the old world supremacy did remain intact, give or take, after the Judgment of Paris. To this day, French wine is still largely considered superior to most by oenophiles. And Californian wines became so expensive compared to their European counterparts, thanks to a lack of government subsidies and high cost of land ownership and farming in California, that our wines are still, to this day, predominantly drunk in California. Few even make it to the east coast of our own damn country. It's a big country, but still. And never have they spread to the rest of the world the way French wine truly has. But what the Judgment of Paris would do was prove that incredible wine could come from virtually anywhere, given enough time, know-how, and decently deep-grown roots of the vines themselves. Regions like Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Argentina, and Chile, not to mention re-emerging wine regions in Europe like Greece, Hungary, Spain, Portugal, and Italy, all quickly took over the world stage and held their own against this French supremacy. While American wines still struggle with their costs and distribution system, which is hampered by laws held over from our Prohibition period, putting us at an extreme disadvantage with wines that cost more here in our own home turf than wines imported here from halfway around the world.
Indeed. And to wrap this up, here are the results of the Judgment of Paris. We really need to put some thunder and lightning sort of Foley behind that. It's the Judgment of Paris.
I'll get right on that.
I know, right?
The guy who doesn't edit these things. He's like, you know what we really need to do? You know, sound effects, special effects, Dave. Get on that.
More work. All right. So 3 of the top 5 white wines were Californian, with Chateau Montelena taking the top spot with their Chardonnay. After this upset, the French judges doubled down on trying to determine which wines tasted quote-unquote French and which tasted quote-unquote Californian, to not have it happen for the Reds. And they did do a better time that round. Only 2 Californian wines snuck into the top 5 spots, including Ridge Vineyards in the 5th spot. But it was once again a Californian wine in the top spot. Stag's Leap Cabernet Sauvignon. I love that. Every time I say the word Sauvignon, it reminds me of a sketch from SNL. Anyway, cut that out.
He's trying to twirl a mustache when he does it too. It's so amazing.
The results shocked the room as well as the wine world. There are even stories of judges demanding their scorecards back in order to mitigate the coming embarrassment. Later, the U.S. House of Representatives even voted May 24th, an important day in American history, and topped the event off with a black tie event which featured the actual Stephen Spurrier, co-architect of the Judgment at Paris, giving the final speech, saying, quote, "It is very just and fitting that we should be here at the Smithsonian to celebrate how a Croat, I love that, a Croat, this is Giergich, by the way, and a Pole, Wienarski, made American history in Paris with a little help from an Englishman." The Croat in question, of course, is Giergich, due in large part to the results of the Judgment of Paris, would go on to open a highly successful Giergich Hills winery, and the Pole, Wienarski, would go on to sell his Stag Leaps holdings for $180 million.
But note that Mike Giergich, his full name, is nowhere to be seen in the movie we're going to talk about today. The film makes winery owner Jim Barrett, played by Bill Pullman, the ostensible winemaker, though in real life he was not. He simply ran the business. His son, Beau, played by Chris Pine and Chris Pine's wig in this movie, is today the winemaker. I'm going to do that every time. Beau is today the winemaker at Chateau Montelena. But at the time, he was a lowly cellar hand under Giergich, who Beau in fact had a great relationship with his father, though the film chose to dramatize them as having a turbulent one, which even included them boxing each other frequently to settle arguments. It's all fun, but not remotely accurate to history. And speaking of history, let's hit Dallas with our wine trivia question of the week.
Let's go.
Mr. D. Chardonnay is the grape that wins the top spot in the Judgment of Paris in the film. This is a Burgundian grape. So if you ever get a white Burgundy of any kind, folks, it's Chardonnay. Maybe there's a second grape, Aligoté or Aligot, that you can pepper in there. But for the most part, it has to be predominantly Chardonnay to be a proper Burgundy Blanc. So the grape you'll find primarily in any Burgundy Blanc. And Chardonnay shares the same parent grape with... Is it A, Merlot, B, Pinot Noir, C, Gamay, or D, Chenin Blanc?
All right. Merlot,
that
Pinot
is,
Noir.
for our listeners, one more time. Does Chardonnay share the same parent grape with A, Merlot, B, Pinot Noir, C, Gamay, and D, Chenin Blanc?
All right. I believe Pinot is parentage for Chardonnay. I think Chenin Blanc is there too. That's too easy. C, Gamay. I believe the sibling of Chardonnay is Gamay.
Correct. It is Gamay, which is Pinot Noir, is the parent to
Yeah.
both of them, both Gamay and to Chardonnay. There are some writings out there that people suspect there might have been a Pinot before Pinot Noir, like a version of Pinot that sort of spawned proper Pinot Noir as well.
Yeah.
And that ancient Pinot that no longer exists, like we just see some of the DNA in all these grapes. And it's a question whether it was proper Pinot Noir that parented all these grapes or whether there was this Papa Pinot that parented everything essentially in the Burgundy region. But for now, what we have settled on for sure is that Pinot Noir is the parent of Chardonnay and Gamay. Good job. Dallas wins again.
Da, 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 da.
All right.
Cut that short.
Let's hit the making of segment, Dallas. Tell our listeners how this wildly fictionalized but equally entertaining film got made.
Indeed. It is definitely entertaining. All right, guys. Here we go. The founders of the Sonoma Valley Film Festival, Mark and Brenda Lahormer, new producers Jody Savin and Randall Miiller, in fact, and one day handed them a script which centered on a historical moment in the culture of wine known as the Judgment of Paris. Miiller and Savin weren't sold on the iteration of the script, but they were quite interested in the story at its center and traveled to Sonoma to meet with both the Lahormers and Jim and Beau Barrett of Chateau Montelena. It was this meeting that clinched it for them, but they decided to pivot the story to focus on the Barretts' story. The locals in the region were all well aware of what the film Sideways had done for the culture and commerce of the Central Coast after its release, and to some degree were optimistic that Bottle Shock could do the same for their corner of the vine-growing world in Napa. And as a result, the locals were more than gracious and supportive to the idea of this film. As they wrote, Alan Rickman was always in mind for the role of Steve Spurrier, whom they had already worked with on the film Noble Son, and Bill Pullman was in their minds as they wrote the part for Jim Barrett. The film shot for 30 days from August 07 to September 07, with actors spending no more than 15 days on set, though clever scheduling and filming techniques makes it seem as though they had more screen time with each other than they actually did. The film shot in peak season for the region, which made accommodations and facilities difficult to secure. Once in post, the team was busy crafting under and behind tight deadlines in preparation for Sundance when they met freestyle releasing Susan Jackson. They agreed that if the big boys didn't come calling, then they would go with freestyle. With CAA repping the film at Sundance, the team was unhappy with the offers, the highest being a $1 million bid that required Savin and Randall to match that amount for P and A. Ultimately, Bottle Shock did not sell at Sundance and was collaboratively self-distributed with Freestyle releasing. The film was released on August 6, 2008, the same week, by the way, as the Beijing Olympics opening ceremony. It was released in Napa and New York in 50 cinemas and grew to about 400 screens. Of the nearly 600 art house cinemas at the time, Bottle Shock would play in a majority of them. So that is a bit of a feat for this film. But it would take only $280K in its opening week. Lifetime box office grosses equal $5 million domestically and $600K internationally.
That's how much Europe gave a shit about our California wine story.
Yeah, they're like, what? Come on, we don't dignify that. So yeah, it grossed $5 million domestically and $600K internationally on a $5 million production budget. Though the production negotiated a home media release where they shared directly in 40% of gross profits. So they likely did okay.
And it should also be noted there was a scandal. Randall Miiller, the director of Bottle Shock, he served a year in a Georgia jail for a fatal accident on the set of Midnight Rider. Yeah. Miiller pled guilty in 2015 to involuntary manslaughter in the death of Sarah Jones, the camera assistant who was struck by a freight train while the crew was attempting to film a scene on a bridge without permission. Turns out they never got the permits to film there. They were kind of doing it. This was not that small of a production, and they attempted to do it guerrilla style without telling the crew they were doing it guerrilla style. 7 years later, the DGA expelled Miiller for life, effectively prohibiting him from directing a signatory film. The expulsion came after Miiller directed another film, Coffee Wars, while on probation. Georgia prosecutors sought to revoke his probation, arguing that Miiller had violated a term forbidding him from directing for 10 years. Miiller maintained that he believed he could direct so long as someone else was responsible for safety on set. After a lengthy hearing in 2021, a judge let Miller off with a warning and did not order him back to jail. Okay, now, that all said, this is the part of the show where we break down the film act by act and then give our thoughts on wine notions in between the act breaks. So let's get started talking about Act 1 of Bottle Shock and then what we think is actually going to pair with this very wine-centric film. Here we go. Act 1. The film opens in 1976 Paris. British wine merchant and sommelier Stephen Spurrier runs a struggling wine shop and wine school. His business is barely surviving, and he complains to his loyal customer Maurice, his one and only loyal customer Maurice, that the French wine establishment has become stale and elitist. Spurrier comes up with an idea to generate publicity: a blind tasting competition comparing famous French wines against wines from emerging regions around the world. Spurrier arrives in Napa Valley and immediately alienates himself to all the rugged Californians, especially Jim Barrett of Chateau Montelena. Spurrier travels to California, rents a car, and drives through dusty vineyards, visibly unimpressed at first. Eventually, he arrives in Napa Valley and meets vineyard owner Jim Barrett at Chateau Montelena. Jim is serious, overworked, and financially stressed. He distrusts the French and believes that Spurrier's tasting is probably designed to embarrass California wines, which was not it's understandable, an understandable concern.
Yes.
And to be fair, even though Spurrier in the movie, the way they do his character is he wants to do this for the publicity. He wants to do this to gain some notoriety, but he does not think the California wines are going to do well. Like, he is visibly shocked that they're any good at
very
all.
Low expectations.
Yeah, so we're kind of skipping over a lot of the details in these synopses, so we don't belabor it too much. But yes, when Alan Rickman, Stephen Spurrier, he's very well, California wines. I mean, come on, this is another rung below the ladder, but this will probably gain a lot of publicity and maybe help my shop in the end. That's why he's doing it. But Jim's son, Beau, thinks differently. He secretly believes their Chardonnay is good enough to compete internationally. Now, a young graduate student named Sam Fulton arrives seeking an internship in winemaking. Jim immediately puts her to work doing hard manual labor. Sam adapts quickly and becomes interested in the vineyard operation as a romantic triangle develops. Beau is attracted to Sam. Gustavo Bramblia, the vineyard foreman and talented Mexican worker, also likes her. And this is played by Freddie Rodriguez, by the way, who is, we'll talk about him, but I think he's my favorite character in this whole movie. For sure. Now, fun fact. Chateau Montelena's 1973 Chardonnay, the one that won the Judgment of Paris, was from, in fact, Sonoma, from purchased fruit, not from the estate vineyards in Napa of Chateau Montelena. So Jim Barrett had purchased the property just in 1972 and planted Cabernet Sauvignon. While they were waiting for those vines to mature, which takes 2 to 3 years before any newly freshly planted vine is going to produce grapes good enough to make wine with. So during that time, Mike Gergich, the actual winemaker of Chateau Montelena at the time, suggested they buy Chardonnay grapes and make white wine that was ready to drink now to keep the cash flow going until the Cabernet was going to be ready. But after winning the Judgment of Paris, they soon also planted Chardonnay on the estate. And today, Chateau Montelena is mostly known for their Cabernet. It's true, just as Jim Barrett intended, not necessarily their Chardonnay, even though a bottle of that 1973 Chard is still sitting in the Smithsonian. And you can buy some Chateau Montelena Chardonnay. It's probably about $60 a bottle for their Chardonnay, and you're looking at like 90 to 100 plus bucks for a bottle of their Cabernet today. Also, fun fact, Sam states in the movie, quote, well, dirt was good enough for Al Lovering Tubbs in 1882 when he went and bought 250 acres of the stuff, right, unquote, when she's referring to Chateau Montelena and the vineyards there. Jim Barrett purchased the chateau in 1972, but it was originally founded and planted by the Tubbs family. The winery is still on "quote unquote" Tubbs Lane, and that Tubbs family, I gotta say, I'm gonna brag. This is my humble brag. It is my maternal grandmother's family. I'm wine royalty, y'all. Now, fun fact, also though, I had no idea about this before when I became a wine nerd. That wasn't why I became a wine nerd. No one in my family was into wine. No one really drank much wine. Like they drank it like they went to an Italian restaurant. They would buy the Chianti, kind of a thing, and like they like wine, but they were not wine people. I knew nothing about wine. I fell into it in my really middle 30s, like kind of all on my own steam. And then once I was into it, my mom was like, "Huh, you're really into this." And she was like, "Did you know?" And just one Christmas, just sort of dropped this bombshell that once upon a time, the Tubbs family, my maternal grandmother's family, they planted all the vineyards. Like they were the ones who made Chateau Montelena a vineyard and started all of that. And they sold it shortly after Prohibition, I think, because they didn't really, obviously Prohibition wiped out everything vineyard wise. Though they didn't rip up the vineyards, or maybe they did. Actually, I'm not 100% about that. Anyway, a little bit of my own family history. That's the end of Act 1 and the end of the fun facts. Dallas, what do we think of Act 1 of Bottle Shock? Had you seen this movie before?
No, I had not seen this film. I heard about it because I love anything that features God, I always forget his name. His name is Severus Snape. Is Snape.
Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman. It is just Snape in my mind, and I hate those films.
Okay, that's wild. Yeah.
But
he's always Hans Gruber to me, or Sense and Sensibility. I love him in Sense and Sensibility. We did an episode on Sense and Sensibility, by the way. My favorite romance movie, and Dallas's was Romeo and Juliet. We did a twofer on those two movies, so go check them out. That was about two Valentine's Days ago, something like that.
At least,
I think it was last year Valentine's Day, so 2025, February of 2025. Go check that out.
Yeah. So anything with this guy in it, I'm going to watch it because he's just fantastic. And it really pisses me off that he's not here and I can't write for him. But no, hadn't heard of this film. I, of course, knew what the Judgment of Paris was, but this film was just not on my radar. Had heard nothing about it. I think I'd seen a poster around the time when we first started the podcast because of a sideways rabbit hole I went down. But no, I had no connection to this film whatsoever. How about you?
Okay. And what'd you... yeah. So I hadn't seen it in quite some time. I'm not a rewatch person, right?
Yeah.
We just did Once Upon a Time in the West, and I mentioned how I'm like, I own this movie on digital, quote unquote own this movie on digital because I loved it so much. I'd seen it once. Yeah. And then that was my second time seeing it. So I just don't rewatch movies very often, if at all. It's like special occasion kind of a thing. Because just like with wine, where I want to taste every wine under the sun, I rarely go back to the same wine twice. I don't go back. I want to watch everything. I want to see most movies that are made. I'm so curious about them. And there's so many hours in life in a day. And so it's like, why would I rewatch something if I remember the experience well in my head? It's another thing if I've seen something and I'm like, I literally have no memory. Like I know I saw it and I cannot picture a single scene from it, hardly. Like maybe I have a snapshot of the movie and it's like, okay, that's worth revisiting because there's no... If you don't have a true memory of something, did it actually happen for you? And so you need to do it again. But if I have a clear memory and I'm like, oh yeah, I love that film. I can like think of most of the scenes in it. There's no reason to rewatch it. I mean, in my head, I know that's not how most people are. But this movie I'd seen, I think only once before, but I remember really liking it. I'd seen it. I think I think this was back in Netflix physical DVD mailing
yes.
to you days, and I think I had them mail it to me, and I was like, "This is great!" What? And I wasn't into wine then. It was just a total lark of a biopic type thing. I wasn't sure what it was going to be about. I just knew it was Alan Rickman, Chris Pine, Bill Pullman. I was like, "What is this cast?" And so I grabbed it. And I liked it a lot then. It does not really hold up. It needs to be said. There are so many elements of this movie that are very dated and feel indie OO's darling. It's one of those movies. This was 4 years after Sideways. Sideways was 2004. This one's 2008. And it's one of those movies that seems to have taken all the wrong lessons from Sideways. Like all the wrong elements of why Sideways worked so well. And I think there's a reason this movie really didn't leave a mark or make much of an impact at the time. And part of that is that everything in this movie is a caricature.
Yeah.
All these, like everyone is dialed to 11 at all.
Including the wig.
Times.
Including
the wig. Chris Pine's wig, guys. You got to see this movie for the hair that Chris Pine sports in this. It is as atrocious and overbearing as any lady wig you have ever seen in an older movie where it's like they're all wearing wigs. And it's like, this is the most like that hair does not fit on that face, like at all. It is so outrageously off. But he sports it and he just has a gay old time doing it.
He works the hell out of it.
He's in it. But Bill Pullman's at 11 the whole time. Chris Pine's at 11 the whole time. Yeah. And one of the reasons I like Freddie Rodriguez is Gustavo is like he's the only one that has even a little bit of nuance and like steadiness to his performance, whereas everyone else is just like this. And Alan Rickman's doing Shakespeare in this, like a very dialed down Shakespeare, but he's being like the asshole British guy, and there's definitely an element where. I don't remember if Alan Rickman was ever on record. I want to say there was an interview where he said like he never met Steven Spurrier. He tried not to watch any archival footage. Like he didn't want to ape the guy. I want to say there's an interview where he said that, but don't quote me on that. But he's definitely not, if you've ever seen an interview with Steven Spurrier, like this is not that guy. This is not that performance. This is a character made for this movie. And that's my problem with it is we mentioned in the history that there were two people from Sonoma County that like wrote an original screenplay. They brought it to Randall Miiller, and I'm forgetting who his co-writer was, but they were like, okay, not that draft. We're going to write our own draft. And they wrote this like Little Miss Sunshine nonsense out of it, where it is that like feel good indie OO's movie where everyone's a caricature. Now in Sideways, your main characters, Miles and Jack, they're assholes to begin, or they have these extreme eccentricities to begin with. But as the movie goes, you start to peel back the layers and see what's underneath. And they have to learn how to dial back their own eccentricities to get anything that they want out of life. And like the point of that movie is to go beyond that. And this movie is like, nope, that's what makes a great character, and go, go, go. So it's fun in that way, but this movie is fruity. It's very fruity. That is the word for me.
It's also very flat to me. It's also a very flat sort of dramatization.
Interesting.
Like I get it. And when I say that, I mean that in like you said, to your point, everyone sort of dialed up to 10 the entire time, and that is a very sort of it's one note. And the note is 10. And it's a little flat for me. It's a little empty, and Act 1 makes me think maybe a single varietal, something that's just a pure single expression of a grape that doesn't necessarily change or go many places or open up much. Not to say that I disliked it, because it does have a at least Act One definitely has there's an aspirational thing to it naturally because of the narrative, the story they're trying to tell, right? It's the old world versus the new world. It is, the old palates, the old taste makers versus these guys who are out in the middle of nowhere in a desert near the mountains in California in the new country, just plucking away and doing their thing. And, that sort of confluence and that sort of intersections on the horizon. So that's entertaining, and naturally there's some stakes and drama there. But Act One, I'm okay.
Yeah,
all right.
I agree with that. Act One moves weirdly fast. Like you're just going from one scene from one place to the next. It gets to Napa Valley fairly quickly. Yeah. You start meeting all the people really fast, and yet there's very little energy.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like things just keep happening. The performances are, again, fun, but there's even this thing where it's like the younger crowd, Chris Pine, Freddie Rodriguez, and Rachel Taylor, the Beau, Gustavo, and Sam, they get in, they're fighting truckers and going to bars and there's all this weird nonsense that you're just like, it's almost like a weird 80s throwback in a lot of ways with a very OO's feel. But when you look at the general makeup of the script and the story and the characters, everything is like, and then I mouth off and get into a fight to show, or when it's then Sam flashes the police officer, and and then the cop gets out, and it's like, there's so many things. And then we box to make me and my dad box to settle arguments, and I'm a hippie, and he's there's so much that is. It's got that 80s extreme quality to it.
It has a lot of
weird
stock,
way.
Yeah, it's weird because it is the retelling of an actual story, but it has a lot of stock character energy to me. Yes. Which, honestly, that's probably, it may be what they decide, how they decide to sort of approach the story, but
plainly,
clearly, but in terms of an actual
the whole
sort
script,
of, apparently it's just feels.
I wish I could find the original script. That would be nice. It's not available online anywhere. I looked. I tried.
That's true. That's actually, that would be interesting to compare.
Right. Now, the people who wrote it, we don't know. I'm not even sure they were writers. So it could very well be that that could be worse than what was written after. We don't know because we've never seen the original script. But this one, as a script, is pretty wanting.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And I know Act One has the very tough job of, again, onboarding us into this, this quasi-real event, at least according to the narrative of the film.
Right.
And it just leaves me wanting more, which means it lowers the bar for. So actually, no, Dave, I'm sorry. That was my bad. I did not ask you what you were thinking about wine. Look at me jumping the gun.
Yeah, in terms of wine thinking, I mentioned fruity already. So this movie's very fruity. I was definitely thinking something that I think for me, I really wanted to stay on theme with the New World versus Old World, the Judgment of Paris. Maybe, Chardonnay, Cabernet, maybe. If it was going to be a Cabernet or a Chardonnay, I wanted it to be from a New World area. So not necessarily California. I was thinking more a Chardonnay from another country that's now decently known for Chardonnay, Cabernet from another country. So a Patagonian Chardonnay and a Chilean or Argentinian Cabernet Sauvignon, or maybe a South African Cabernet Sauvignon, something like that, Australian, something of that nature. But the fruitiness of this film, this is not, it's not super deep. So the wine was either going to counter the simpleness of the script by being more dimensional than it was. And that's where I was thinking I needed to lean. It's okay, maybe the wine is going to be the thought-provoking part of this pairing. And the movie doesn't require much of us.
It really does.
Just watch really it. Just let it play. And you could walk away for 5 minutes, come back. You missed nothing important,
And, I should probably hold off on this thought until the end, but I'm just going to say it. This film also... There's such a great film actually in this idea that it almost angered me that this was what was released.
I mean, the fact that the Judgment of Paris doesn't even happen until the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Right. Right.
And then it's just
Right.
like sped through, and you're
Right.
like, what are we doing here? This is
Like-
crazy.
Like,
yeah.
like reading the documents about what happened on the day and how everyone was approaching
Yeah.
it and how nervous everyone was and how people were trying to. It was just. It sounded
races through that shit. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. It sounded like the kind of, a foppery, a sort of like what's a Clue kind of energy. There was this weird when I was reading about these descriptions, you know what I mean? Like it was just this event that had never taken place before, and you had the old world versus the new world in one.
So you're saying this should have been like an Olivia Colman comedy?
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be
she
great.
should have been one of the judges. Yeah.
Actually, it's about time for another. There you
go.
Yeah. All right. Anyway,
probably the 50th anniversary or would have been the year to do it, but it's come and gone. It's come and gone.
We'll
and maybe even, and one thought I had, especially in terms of the wine, maybe having to pick up the slack of the movie, is the script was really bothering me throughout the entire opening act, and I was like, what if the winemaker was a writer?
Oh, no.
And I knew they were a good writer.
Nice.
And so that's where my thinking was there. All right, let's get into Act 2 and then we'll follow up with more.
I like it. All right, Act 2, guys. Hold on to your tits. Okay, cut that part. Spurrier tours Napa wineries and begins tasting California wines. Initially skeptical, he becomes surprised by their quality. At Chateau Montelena, Beau secretly gives Spurrier bottles of their Chardonnay after Jim, the dad, refuses to officially participate. Spurrier is impressed enough to include Montelena in the Paris competition. Meanwhile, Jim's financial troubles deepen. The vineyard is heavily in debt, and banks are pressuring him. Jim becomes obsessed with ensuring the vintage succeeds because the future of the winery depends on it. Meanwhile, Beau continues clashing with his father, which crescendos when Jim finds out that Beau gave their wine to Spurrier. He tells his son he's essentially fired and has to figure out what he's going to do next because he's not staying there. Gustavo is also seen as making a very small lot of his own wine, having purchased grapes from another vineyard run by a fellow sympathetic Mexican vineyard owner. The wine is turning out transcendent, but Gustavo fears what will happen if the Barretts find out he's essentially becoming competition. Though Gustavo simply wanted to try his hand at this, he'll need to sell it to be able to make another vintage to pay for the batch of grapes, but he's not out seeking to compete. Just yet, per se. Nevertheless, Jim finds out and refuses to even try Gustavo's wine and also fires him. He couldn't afford to keep him anyway. Later, Gustavo convinces Sam to try the wine. Blown away by the experience, she kisses Gustavo and the love triangle shrinks to a straight line. Beau comes by the next morning to pick up Sam, finds them together, and in a rage, drives away, leaving her there. Fun fact, in 1976, Gustavo was the cellar master at Chateau Montelena, working with Mike Giergich. He was one of the first Mexican-American graduates from the UC Davis Oenology program. While the movie portrays him as a close friend to Beau Barrett, in reality his role was more focused on the scientific technical side of production at Chateau Montelena. Following his success at Chateau Montelena and a later long tenure at Giergich Hills, Mike Giergich's winery, Brambilla, that is Gustavo, of course, launched his own label, Gustavo Wine. Montelena, Giergich Wines, and Gustavo Wine all still exist and make amazing wines to this day. All right, what are we thinking, bud?
All right. So at this point, I mean, the love triangle thing was kind of fun, totally beside the point of everything. Yeah. I mean, it was just
that was just nonsense.
It's one of the things that there's even the scene that we left out of the synopsis here where Chris Pine's Beau goes to his mother, who's remarried, or at least is with another man, divorced from his dad, and basically gets the money to rescue the winery. to pay some of the debts, and just drives Jim Barrett in a rage. And it's just like, Jim Barrett, I know they had Bill Pullman in mind for this role, but I'm like, do you think all he does is scream? Like,
apparently.
It's all this character does. And he's just the most like Jim Barrett is in this movie the most emotionally unkempt individual in existence. Like he's just nothing but rage and I want to make great wine, but I don't want anything. I want everyone to give me everything I want, and never anything I don't want, and anything step out of line or not be wherever I want you to be at the. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, dude, calm the fuck down. You're making as many mistakes as anyone. Like, calm down and just like work with people. And he's just terribly written. And he's the one and only person that wanted to work on this fucking movie and give his likeness and whatnot to it. And I'm just like, wow, they do him dirty. And he wasn't even a winemaker. So they like made up, again, this movie creates drama when there doesn't need to be drama. Yeah. The drama is so inherent in what's going on. You have the culture clash of the British coming over and meeting the Americans and finding the Californian wine. I'm sure there would be some politics going on in the cellar and in the vineyard and whatnot that could play into that. You have Sam as an intern that could, throw a monkey wrench into certain things. Maybe there's a love triangle. Oh, that's fine. But this is so like Dirty Dancing levels of dramatization.
That's actually a good parallel. That's good.
It kind of is. It kind of is. Parts of it, especially when Beau went to like the mother and they were at the fine dining place and he was the hippie long-haired vineyard guy and didn't fit in. It was so Dirty Dancing in the way they tried to portray that. And I'm like, dude's Dirty Dancing was like 20 years ago. We need to evolve our storytelling here. So there's just so much drama heaped in this second act that is all unnecessary and beside the point and histrionic and not well played. And again, it's kind of funny. This is just such a movie you can turn your brain off at. And I guess they succeeded in making a wine movie you can turn your brain off, which is no small feat in certain ways.
That's true.
But at the same time, it is a shame because this could have been so much better. So yeah, for me right now, I think my thinking, I definitely wanted a wine. I had a wine in mind that was going to be by a winemaker who he's not, he doesn't write screenplays or anything, but he's written 2 books now. And he's one of the best wine writers. They're books on wine. He's a winemaker.
Okay.
And I've read like his turns of phrase and the way he constructs a paragraph have just blown me away. I actually messaged him once and I asked him about his background. He's like, oh yeah, he had like a philosophy degree and an English degree in his background. And he's like, before he decided to pick up the family business and become a winemaker himself. So he's like, yeah, that's where I thought I wanted to go. And I worked hard on that before, coming back into wine. But man, he's just good. Okay. And then the kind of wine he has fallen in love with and makes the most of and promotes it fits this movie for a couple of reasons. I'll reveal what it is in Act 3, but for now I'll tell you that it's the red wine I think should have become the California red wine instead of Cabernet Sauvignon.
Okay.
I think it's the one he believes the exact same thing. And he's like, this should be the red grape of California, and especially the place where he's at and making wine in California.
California, good title.
And he is also in a part of California that was one of the great award winners in that 1889 World Fair of Paris. That this area of California is only just now kind of getting some notoriety again. So all of those reasons really make it fit. And again, I really wanted something fruity. This grape is fruity, but also astringent. And it's that blend of the two. And so I think that fits perfect with the Alan Rickman astringency and the Jim Barrett astringency. And there is something astringent. As fun and as turn your brain off as it is, the thing that rubs against you, there's this astringency. I think in the wine, it's beautifully balanced. And in the movie, it's kind of not. But that's where the wine comes in and helps you out to get through this movie. Anyways, your thoughts on Act 2 here, Dallas. What evolved for you?
Yeah, I had difficulty pairing with the film itself, so because I sat the entire time I was watching it, I was rewriting it. I was,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I was like resketching it. I was the entire thing because it upsets me that you have everything for, honestly, like a sort of a New World epic, right? You've got the backdrop of a new frontier. You know, it's the wine world of California coming into its own and making a claim and looking back to its parentage and saying, see, Ma and Dad, we're better now. You know what I mean? We're different, we're better, whatever it is. We're doing our own fucking thing, and it's just as good. It can stand up. So you've got that, right, as the sort of backdrop. You've got the generational thing with the son and the father. You've got Gustavo's indigenous kind of roots, right? And the idea that not only is he, you know, skilled in this because of a familial background, but this is the land of his family as well. And, you know, you've got this sort of the idea of these, you know, this white family just showing up and sort of buying some land. We're going to do wine, people, you know, that kind of thing, which is also another note, right? You've got all
if
this
they wanted to find drama,
stuff.
right?
It's there.
And there's a little bit of that in this movie, and it starts to creep up, and especially with Gustavo and Jim, there's that tension where he basically fires him for trying to make his own wine, and Gustavo's like, yeah, but you were never going to let me make my own wine.
Right.
So like, when was I going to do, and I needed to have a job while I tried it out and got my feet wet. And it's like, so there is that tension where it's like, you know, even though the business is apparently crumbling, which makes no sense. He bought the property in 1 year ago. Like it kind of makes or a couple years ago. It's like, it's happening so suddenly that I feel like, again, the movie's kind of drumming up this drama, but some of that's there, but it could have been explored so much deeper and then, so much better.
On top of that, you have, which is the most interesting to me, is the, you know, these sort of plebes out in the hinterlands going to the royal court, right? You're going to the royal court.
French, l'Académie de Vin.
Exactly. And it's just such missed opportunity.
And again, there's a little bit of that. Like when Chateau Montelene is about to win and Rickman runs over to Bo and he's like, do you have anything nice to wear? Go put it on. Go put it on.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so there's a little bit of comedy in that, but it's... again, the Judgment of Paris itself is like 10 minutes of this movie. It's wild how fast it is. And when I was watching it, this is only my second time seeing it, I remembered it. Because I was not a wine nerd at the time, so I didn't know the real story behind it. I realized it was based on a true story, and I'm like, this is really cool. And I loved watching this the first time. Knowing the story now a bit better, it was stunning. I'm like, are we still in California?
Right.
Like when the fuck are we getting to the actual Judgment of Paris? And some of the drama and all that stuff and the characters, I was like, ooh, it felt more, you know, I was watching this probably around like the early 2010s. So this was not that old then. This was maybe 4 or 5 years old at most. And now 10 to 12 years later, I'm like, it's starting to feel It's starting to feel very dated at this point. Yeah.
No, I agree. So wine wise, I'm going off in a different direction. I'm trying to like find things that interest me. And what interests me about this film is this connection between Old World and New World and sort of coming together in this one moment, because that's essentially kind of what the Judgment of Paris is. Even though it's a competition, it is these two worlds meeting formally in an environment that is recognized by the industry, by the clientele, the customers, and both sort of just digging around one another, and whatever happens. And so I'm looking at a wine that is a convergence of Old World and New World, and possibly even the vintners themselves. The story of how they got to wine. And there's I already have the wine in mind by the time we got here. So the bottle, it is a combination of Italian, French, and Australian, and American. So yeah, that's all I'm saying now. All right, Act 3, let's do it.
Act 3. When Beau arrives at the winery, he discovers his father in disarray. The Chardonnay has turned murky brown in the bottle. All of it. Jim believes the entire vintage is ruined, though it tastes normal when Beau takes a swig. Devastated, Jim orders all the wine destroyed and hauled away for dumping. A toddler, as we already said. It's like instantly, like no, like let's look into this and see what.
Throw it all away.
I know. But unable to accept defeat, Beau takes the wine to a viticulture specialist and discovers the discoloration is temporary, a result of having created the wine too perfectly without the slightest exposure to oxygen, and will naturally clear up within a day or two. Beau and Sam drive frantically to recover the wine before it's destroyed, but run out of gas. They unsuccessfully try to flag down passing cars until Sam finally flashes a police officer to get help. The officer is torn between duty and boobs, but boobs win out and he assists them. Beau discovers the local bar owner, Joe, played by Elisha Dushku, by the way. Yeah. All the women in this film seem to have boy names. It's interesting. Intercepted the supposedly ruined bottles before they were destroyed, before she intended to recycle the glass. So the bottles are saved and the vintage survives. Jim reluctantly accepts that Beau may have been right. He even suggests Beau go to Europe to represent the Napa winemakers at the event being hosted by Spurrier, which the other winemakers agree to. The movie finally shifts to Paris for the famous blind tasting competition. Prestigious French judges confidently expect French wines to dominate. California wines are treated almost like a joke. Spurrier organizes the event carefully while worrying whether his stunt will backfire. As scores are tallied, it becomes clear that Chateau Montelena Chardonnay has defeated the elite French white wine. Spurrier somewhat hurriedly tells Beau to go change into something nice. He's going to need it. When the results are announced, 3 California wines in the top 5 spots for the white wines, at least, and Montelena in number 1. The judges are stunned and outraged. Back in California, the Barrett family and Napa winemakers hear the news. At first, they can hardly believe it. Then reporters and wine buyers begin flooding them with calls and orders. The victory transforms Napa Valley into an overlooked farming region, into a globally respected wine destination. Epilogue. Spurrier and Maurice at the L'Académie du Vin. There are still no customers, as now Spurrier is a pariah amongst the French wine world, having just allowed California wine to dominate them. But he remarks how this has opened a door that can never be closed again. Roll credits. What did we think about this ending? The ending is, as rushed as it is, it does work.
I think the ending is how to say this? I think
the short film, the whole movie should have just been.
Yeah, precisely. It was the weightiest thing about the entire film. It was the most interesting. Honestly, it was the most interesting thing about the entire film. Even the epilogue, the relationship between Dennis Farina. By the way, hats off to Dennis Farina in this, because he's he's playing against type, because he's always someone's, like Italian mafioso or some mafioso adjacent. So hats off to that guy for this. But the epilogue, I think, is kind of perfect. It's weirdly perfect. It would fit for an even grander film, I think. The one I had in my head now,
the one you would rewrite.
Yeah,
absolutely. Agreed. I will also say unlike real life, or unlike the movie, in real life, Napa really didn't pick up on this news for a while. It more stunned Europe. I think it then hit as all things do, it's Europe, then the East Coast, and then slowly trickles down. And like Napa Valley didn't start touting this for a little while. It was one of those things where one of the things that's remarked about in articles written about the Judgment of Paris is how long it took Napa to get their shit together and take advantage of it, rather than that night after the event. Here's the press and here's all the everything. Anyway. So this ending for me works really well. Most of it did. Even the whole weird thing with the wine turning brown, which also not really it's over dramatized more than it actually needed to be. But it does work as an 11th hour. But to some degree, it's they came up with one more thing to not do the Judgment of Paris. I'm like,
Right.
why are we still in California? Stop making up shit and go to France. God damn it. Like, just be on a soundstage. You don't film in France. I get that you don't have we're not going to film anything in Europe. Like, we don't, so we're not going to do that much. But just go on a soundstage. I don't care. Do something. No one in America knows what France looks like. It's all good. Just film it somewhere. Especially back in the 00s. I didn't know what France looked like. I'm sure plenty of Americans do. But this works really well. The Judgment of Paris, as quick as it is, works. So for me, I'm sticking to my guns on this. And, a question I have for you, Dallas, if you had to pick two wines besides Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon that should have become the flagship wines, the white and the red for California, what should they have been instead?
Jesus Christ.
Or should they have been Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon?
That's a hell of a question.
The hell of dead space.
Honestly, it's like, holy crap. You mean just in general, or of the ones on that were sort of making the cut?
You could say, well, think about what's made the cut now, and like, should two of them have even then maybe been the ones to spotlight and blow up?
No, I'm not even going to pretend that anything other than those two makes sense for me, because of course my knowledge is more limited than yours in sort of the depth of the wine field at this time. And I mean, they make sense to me. It may not answer the question, but somewhere in there, I'm sure someone would laugh at this, but maybe an Albarino.
Okay, fair.
maybe just because it just does so well in California.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's a hell of a question. Wow, I've never thought about that.
Well, for me, this is going to answer which wine I paired it with, at least the red wine. The white wine I would pick, I think my number one white wine that I think should have come would have been Chenin Blanc.
Oh.
I think it's so much more consistent everywhere in California as making just beautiful, like Chardonnay is such a what is your exact vinification methods, what exact style of it, and Chenin Blanc takes so much more while remaining beautiful and complex, while still being just I've never found someone where I've poured them a Chenin Blanc and they're like, ooh, not for me, which is just not true for Chardonnay.
Okay, so is that the sort of criterion that its expression is?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No, but Sauvignon Blanc, I think, would have probably been the more likely culprit, and I still think would have been better than Chardonnay here in California, because it does rich styles, it does light styles in California, and it is really, even the rich styles of Sauvignon Blanc coming out of Napa Valley right now, like, you describe it to me on paper and I'm like, oh, that's not the kind of white wine I want to drink, and yet it is. When I taste it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's rich, but that's beautiful. Okay. Whereas rich Chardonnays are often not. Like, they are the thing I don't want to drink. So Sauvignon Blanc or Chenin Blanc for the whites, and then for the reds, I gotta say, it's Cabernet Franc. I think Cabernet Franc should have been the grape for two reasons. One, it's the grape that they struggle to get ripe enough in Europe. It's why it's more of a blend, or at least in Bordeaux. It's why it's the blending grape in Bordeaux. It's a blending grape so much more often in Super Tuscans in Italy, but in California, Cabernet Franc, it is where you get Cabernet Franc tends to be the Loire Valley in France. And I'm not a fan of that. I know plenty of people are. I think I'm missing a sensory taste bud. It tastes like dirty water to me. It's too delicate and light, and just like there's nothing going on that's pleasant in the glass. But people who like Loire Cab Franc, they are blown away by it. So I think I am literally missing, an element of taste that they are getting out of that. A certain taste bud, whatever it is, that is missing. Like, I taste under all those other, like the other flavors that are going on in there, and so it's missing that cohesion. And I'm like, wow, I've yet to taste a single Loire Cab Franc, and yes, especially Chenin wine nerds, I've never had a Chenin that I haven't wanted to spit out. But New World Cab Franc.
I can concur on this. I can absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. New World Cab Franc, though, you get it riper. It has the fruitiness, which is why it's going to match this movie as well. The fruit is there, but it's not too much. It's not overpowering. It doesn't become the alcohol bomb as often as Cabernet Sauvignon does. And that green bell pepper astringency that balances out the fruitiness is more prominent in Cab Franc often than in Cab Sauv. And it comes through. In the New World wines, it's like the best of both worlds. You get the ripeness that California reds are known for. You get that astringency and complexity and earthiness and minerality that European reds are known for. And it is just this beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, the Livermore Valley in California is the place that is right now trying to make Cab Franc like the red wine grape of the Livermore Valley. Back in 1889, they won the World Fair of Paris for a Sauterne-style dessert wine that they were making in the Livermore Valley. And that was their huge claim to fame at the time. And back then, we even called it a Sauterne because there were no rules and we were allowed to. So it was a quote-unquote Sauterne that won the World Fair back in 1889. But these days, it is the Stephen Kent Winery and winemaker Stephen Kent. He loves the Cab Franc grape and thinks it is like the greatest grape in existence. Definitely wants to make it the red grape of the Livermore Valley. Probably thinks it should be the red grape of all of California. He inherited his winery, kind of sort of. His dad had ran a different brand winery. They sold that and then had to rename their winery. He's actually Stephen Kent Mirasau is his full name. And the Mirasau winery was the one that sold. And then now it's the Stephen Kent Winery is the one they still own and make their own wine with. And that's the one where Cab Franc is their flagship grape. And they do this really cool thing where they do every year, they release a Cab Franc and they release it aged in wood, one aged in rock, and one aged in steel. And then one called Elements that's a blend of all three.
Huh.
And you can get all four and taste them side by side. And it's the same vintage, the same Cab Franc from the Livermore Valley, same vineyard. And then they're all in these different aging materials to see the exact difference that makes. And then Elements, of course, that perfect blend.
All right. Future episode there for sure.
I have all four bottles sitting next to me now. So yes,
this is why we work well.
Future episode. This is why we work well together. And they're gorgeous. They're fruity. They're complex. They're layered. They have minerality. They have that nice green bell pepper astringency. They have earth. They have spice. It's just Cab Sauv can have all of these things as well. And the old Mirasau winery he used to work with, his family winery was mostly predominantly Cab Sauv. That was their claim to fame. And when he first founded Stephen Kent Winery, their inaugural release in 2000 or 2001, I'm forgetting now. I drank it a while ago. I got it on WineBid. I got their flagship Cabernet. They started with Cab Sauv. They weren't doing Cab Franc originally back in the 00s. And it still drank, it held up better than the Coppola wines. It was amazing. It drank, like you could tell it was well aged, but it had lost nothing. It was amazing. And so, but Cab Franc is what he's putting. He's like, this is the future for California and definitely for the Livermore Valley. So I want a world where Cab Franc is what Cabernet Sauvignon is today, where more people appreciate it, more people understand, and especially New World Cab Franc. And then either Sauvignon Blanc or Chenin Blanc. If you're going to do a white, guys, do that out there.
Yeah, I like the Chenin. Yeah, that's true. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's rare.
What about you?
Across. All right. So as I said,
by the way, sorry, I forgot. Stephen Kent, writer. I have his book called Lineage, where he just tells his story, and it's just a family story. It's very simple. It's like, as a wine book, there's nothing about it that like is going to be gripping or thrilling or anything. And motherfucker can write a sentence. Like, it is just flowing passages that you're like, this should be boring me to tears, and it's not. This is amazing. And it sucks you right in. He's an amazing writer, and I wish he wrote this screenplay.
I wish, yeah. Anyway, go check out that book, guys. Any of Kent's books, in fact.
Lineage, Stephen Kent. Yeah.
Lineage, Stephen Kent. All right. So, as I said, I had a bit of difficulty kind of working into a pairing for this. So I decided to kind of go a little against type, a little left field, and pair with the experience of the Paris judgment, or judgment at Paris, which is this sort of convergence of old world and new world, and as alluded to in the last few scenes of the film, we said in our synopsis, our character is sitting at the table, and there is no new business in his Académie du Vin, but he says that this is just the beginning. Pretty soon, we're going to be tasting Chardonnays from, and he goes through the list of countries that we now
Patagonia.
get. Yeah, we now get great wines
As we have
from,
now,
of
yeah.
course. And one of those countries he mentions, of course, is Australia. This film is hinged on the American relationship. So I wanted to find a wine that is sort of the convergence of old world and new world, not only in terms of the grapes and the parentage and expressions, but also in terms of maybe the narrative and the story behind the vintners and the creators themselves. And my pick is the Domaine, Terlato, and Chapoutier, which is a collaboration between legendary French-Australian wine grower Michel Chapoutier and wine industry icon Italian-American Anthony Terlato. The Chapoutier family have been working in the Rhone Valley since 1808. Their ancestor, Polydore Chapoutier, was the first to buy vines there, shifting from being a simple grower to making and trading his own wines, and not unlike our guy here in California in this film. And now that pioneering spirit is visible 7 generations later with Michel Chapoutier. And Anthony Tony Terlato was the chairman and founder of Terlato Wine Group, who indelibly influenced the American wine industry and culture for over 60 years with his work with the Pacific Wine Company and Rutherford Hill. We have the 2019 Terlato and Chapoutier Shiraz. You can't see that, but we'll have pictures for you, of course, on the Substack. You should always check out the Substack.
I've had it before.
In terms of they are really interested in the soil, of course, the terroir. It's composed of schist, of course, and limestone and quartz. The harvest is performed at maturity, usually 2 weeks later than neighboring plots, to avoid over-maturation. 100% destemmed grapes are fermented in concrete tanks. Maceration lasts from 4 to 6 weeks, and a gentle extraction is commenced by pumping over, and a long maceration on skins ensure elegant and fine tannins. That's all from their website, of course. Go look it up. 100% of their wine is aged for 18 months in French oak barrels. In terms of the color, it is deep and dark and intense and nice and bloody, and there's even some violet in the right light. Again, I've had 2 glasses, so it may just be my vision at this point. Lots of great black fruits in this. There's even a floral, like violet-y kind of nose. There's some anise or licorice. It is really velvety. Really, 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 really velvety. There's also some smoke, of course, and that tobacco adjacent thing, which I can never quite identify, but I think it's tobacco. I think it's a tobacco kind of note, leathery maybe. And I think it's fantastic. I've gone through 3/4 of the bottle, hence my mumbling and stumbling over all the words tonight.
Yeah.
And I fucking love it. It is the convergence of the old world and the new world with our Italian-American and our French-Australian winemakers, and
it's a world like coming to like a big blend of all these different places, and it's coming from a new world area. It's Shiraz, which is Syrah. It's the exact same grape, just what the Australians call it. So it is another noble grape kind of transplanted over to a new world area. So yeah, and I've had a lot of those Terlato and Chapoutiers. They're great.
They're so
good.
fantastic.
They're so drinkable. Yeah.
I wasn't expecting.
All right, guys,
to drink
go
all
find go find one of those. Also, check out Stephen Kent Winery. You can buy from them direct online. They have, if you're in the California area, I don't think they've gotten out of California yet, but certain parts of California, they've gotten their wines in Vons. So they have a Cabernet Franc Blanc, a white version of Cabernet Franc, where you just don't use the skins.
Franc Blanc,
Yeah. We've had this, Dallas. We've had like
that's what I'm thinking. That's the one
I'm like, You came over and we drank almost like the whole bottle in like one day. It was so stupidly drinkable. So they have that. They have, of course, the elements, the wood, rock, and steel, and then the elements, and then they have some higher end. If you can afford it, they then have like their high end Cab Francs, which are properly California priced in that like $75 to $135-ish type thing. But the elements, that's like $55. So it's not cheap, but it's not stupid priced or anything like that. You're all in that sort of like, I think even the Cab Franc Blanc is like $30 or $35 bottle. So everything that they do is going to be in that like $30 to $60 bottle. And then you get to the high end stuff. So check them out as well. And you know what? Do check out Bottle Shock. If you do not know the story behind the Judgment of Paris, it's highly fictionalized, but it does end the way it ends. It is, the characters are roughly who they're supposed to be. So you can go watch it. It's a fun late 00s romp that you can turn your brain off with. And the cast is kind of amazing. So it's worth seeing. And Freddie Rodriguez as Gustavo. Honestly, we didn't talk really about Rachel Taylor as Sam, but she's another one who is like... Yeah, she's Yeah, I mean, again, these characters are not written well. They're not given much to do, but what they're given to do, like these actors are giving it their all. They're really trying to make something of this. I was impressed by all of them.
They're on 10 for sure.
Yes. Yes. All right. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this full deep dive into Bottle Shock, and be sure to join us in the upcoming weeks as we tackle that other wine movie from the OOs. That's right. We're finally doing it, baby. Sideways. It's coming up soon. And then we're going to cover, the reason we're covering Sideways is then we have to cover the sort of satirical sequel to Sideways. Did you know this even existed? It just dropped last month on streaming, Napa Boys, with returning guest Decarceration, the man who spent 10 years locked away in an American prison and now watches and reviews all the movies he missed while away on his Substack. He has been a guest with us before, where we did these fake wines paired with fake drinks paired with fake movies. It was a two-parter. We went so long. This one's going to be a one-parter. I promise. I'm going to force him. It's going to be a one-parter, but he is going to come back for that. And then another returning guest. We're going to hit One Cut of the Dead, a true love letter to low-budget filmmaking, which we'll be tackling with screenwriter Mark Palermo. He was on when we used to do music and comics and all these other things. He came and did a Carly Rae Jepsen album with us. And finally, he's a screenwriter, though, so he had to come back and do a proper movie with us this time. So, and he has another podcast, Movies and Chaos, that we love, and I got to be a guest on. So he's got to come back and be a guest on us, on our podcast. So he wrote one of my top five films of all time, 2012's Detention. Go check that out if you have not. If you don't like it, that's personal failing on your part. Now, before we go, if you love what we do here, we ask only one thing, broken down into about 12 sub things. Follow and subscribe to us. That helps us grow, gets us in tight with all the algorithms, and also tell a friend or fellow cinephile or a wienephile about us, especially if they're both. That's got to be like a few dozen of us crazy bastards out there. So for fuck's sake, if they should be listening to the one and only wine and movie pairing podcast in existence. So cinephile, a wienephile, or even if they just kind of like movies and kind of like wine, who knows? They might dig this. Maybe you dig this and you're neither of those two things either. Let someone else know. Even better, and to endear yourself to our even more. No. Even better.
No. That's fantastic.
Even better, and to endear yourself even more to our completely self-obsessed hearts, go follow us on Substack. Just go to vintertainmentstudios.com where you can interact with us, find bonus wine and movie pairings, and also make sure to check out our Wine Cellar Cinema, our new microcinema built inside a wine shop here in Mid-City, Los Angeles. Our first night of short films, each paired with the wine, is set for June 19th. Yes, June 10th, and tickets go on sale next week. Spots will be limited as we can only fit so many people into a wine shop. So head to winecellarcinema.substack.com to get notified for all our Wine Cellar Cinema events. And many thanks to our sponsor, Curated Wine Shop. No idea where to begin finding a wine that pairs with your movie? That's okay. Almost literally no one does. But Curated is here to help. They accept every entertainment-inspired challenge and will curate the selection to match your palate. Just tell them what you're trying to pair with, your budget, your preferences, and they will show you the way. Curated is a boutique wine shop on La Brea Avenue, Mid-City, Los Angeles, founded and operated by peeps currently and previously part of the entertainment ecosystem. Johnny, Kelly, Allison, and Mia, they're all fantastic. Go meet them. They carry an ever-changing, wide-ranging selection of small lot artisanal wines, from the known and comforting to the completely unique reds, whites, rosés, oranges, sparklings, dry wines, sweet wines, and everything in between. Go check them out if you're in the LA area. And by the way, they are the wine shop where Wine Cellar Cinema is built. So if you're interested in that, definitely check them out. You can find them online, curated-wines.com. They do ship, even if you're not in Los Angeles. That's curated-wines.com for Curated, vintertainmentstudios.com for us Entertainment Bros, and winecellarcinema.substack.com for all things Wine Cellar Cinema. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back in 1 week with another wine and entertainment pairing. Fo yo Vintertainment. Ciao for now.
Later, guys.
It's the sunlight. It's the rain. If you don't get it, I don't know how to explain. It's more than just time in a bottle. Give me each summer in a bottle. It's laughter through tears. It's memories I've piled high throughout the years. I save them for when I get knocked down. And if it's time, I'll move on a skip town. But I'll keep each summer in a bottle. Give me each summer in a bottle. Each sip is laughter by a fire. I know you felt it too, that deep stirring of desire. All the good things you feel before they're gone. If you bottle them, then they can live on. So you don't forget the faces or the places you don't want to let go. I don't wanna let go. Do you wanna let go? I don't wanna let go. I don't wanna let go. It's each moment that you seize. Carpe diem or whatever you please. Someday I'll find a little spot of land and be proud of the vintage I make with my own hand. Until then, I'll collect, so when I'm old, I can resurrect each summer, each season, each sunset, I will keep them all in a bottle. Give me each summer in a bottle. Give me each summer in a
Terlato will be remembered as the driving force. I'm going to say that again. The driving force behind Pinot Grigio's skyrocketing popularity with U.S. wine consumers.
Is it skyrocketing right now?
Well, as it was at the time of this article.
Oh, okay.
But in general, I think it's holding steady. I think Pinot's holding steady, for sure.
Okay.
But why? Do you know something contrary to that? Is it waning?
Pinot Grigio is like persona non grata. Are you
oh,
kidding me?
come on, impossible! No way.
No, it's got a terrible rep. It's like it's tasteless. It's tasteless slop is what most. It's kind of like going through a Merlot moment. Yeah, it's like no one likes it.
All right, I'll buy that. All right, if he's wrong, tell him, guys. If I'm wrong, don't tell me. Anyway.